So today is going to be our very first live interaction on YouTube, and I've been waiting for this moment for the last 6 months, but I was not being consistent with my posting and my interactions with you guys. But the moment I realized that this is the time to come up with something good, which is going to help us to grow together. So it took some time. It took me at least 20 hours to finally come up with something which is going to be of value to a lot of people. And with that, we are going to start. So before we start on this journey in which we are going to have numerous live sessions and we are going to learn a lot of things, I want to tell you that what these things are all about. All of these sessions are going to be about learning something, and that thing is going to be directly related to the bad attributes or the characteristics that become the main reason behind our failure in life. And my obsession has always been that I want to understand that how these bad characteristics are related to human nature. How do they impact our human nature at a psychological, biological, evolutionary, and neurological structure? How do these things create tangible changes within our psyche, and how do we get rid of them? Step by step, gradually, incrementally, or maybe all of a sudden, if it is possible. Now, I am a big fan of making these changes pretty rapidly. I don't like to wait, but in some cases you have to stay patient, because you cannot do everything on your own and you cannot do everything abruptly. Sometimes you have to be patient, and sometimes being the stallion, being that person who is courageous, that is more important. So the first thing that I wanted to come up with, or it is also the main crux of today's topic, is that as human beings, we live on a plane where we have two choices every single time. And in those two choices, we have to decide that which choice do we want to take. And since we are evolutionary beings, and you will see that I will keep referring to the evolution and the biological structure of our existence, because I think that that's the way through which we can understand that how things happen. So as human beings, as evolutionary beings, we need to understand this one thing, that we operate on the principle of pleasure and pain. The human brain, or what we call it, the neurological structure of our brain, is designed to save us from pain and is structured to keep us pursuing the things which give us the pleasure that we want in our life. You can do anything in your life, but your brain is always going to operate from two principles. Number one, your brain is never going to tell you to do something which is going to cause pain. And through pain, I mean that in any circumstance, if your brain thinks that this thing is going to exhaust your intellectual capabilities, or it is going to exhaust your physical capabilities, it is always going to tell you to stay away from it. You are never going to get any circumstance in which any of these two things are going to happen, and your brain is going to tell you that, okay, let's do it. Okay, let's do 1,000 push-ups. Let's sit and read for 4 hours. Your brain is never going to tell you that. It is simply not going to happen. And that's why I love when Robert Greene says it in 48 Laws of Power, and it resonates with this so much. There is nothing natural about power. Either that power is in the political arena, either that power is in the social arena, either that power is somewhere where it matters, or it is just about the fundamental principles of human life. There is one thing about power. It is not permanent, and number two, you will have to go against your nature, your biological, your neurological, your evolutionary nature to gain that power. So what you need to understand is that discipline or different attributes of your life are totally against your evolutionary nature. And so the point of the matter is, or the point of the discussion of this matter is, Whenever we do something, we do it to avoid pain and to gain pleasure. That point has been made clear. So that's why we have two choices in our life. Number one, we can do something fast, or number two, we can do something slow. Because every action that we take has an innate purpose to pursue pleasure. And so that means that the outcome or the byproduct of every action is a feeling, right? So when you have a feeling and you want to pursue something, which means is that you don't want to get rich. You want to have the feeling of being secured through the fact that it doesn't matter what happens, the needs of your family, the needs of yourself are going to be met. The desires that you have regarding buying the materialistic pleasures of life are going to be met, and there is going to be no problem with that. And so as a result of that, you're not pursuing money, you're not pursuing paper, you're not pursuing God money in the form of gold or silver. The thing that you're pursuing is the peace of the mind that it doesn't matter what happens, there's only going to be one thing, and that is that your fundamental needs are going to be met. And there is nothing in this world that can shake you in the context of the fulfillment of your worldly matters. Now, when we are totally dependent upon how we feel, when we are totally dependent upon the fact that everything that we do is actually the pursuit of an emotion, we totally become tricked. We get tricked and manipulated by our mind, which tells us that we can create this feeling through other channels. In simple words, it means is that your brain tells you that you don't have to worry about going in the outside world and trying to do something. You can create this feeling of wealth just by sitting in the proximity or in the confinement of your room, and you can just keep fantasizing about the fact that how the world will feel like once you get rich. Which is an odd thing to say, but okay, you can go in the world, you can make sales, you can analyze data, you can do anything that you want to do. And as a result of that, you can create money. But on the other hand, you can sit in your room, you can look at yourself, and you can ask yourself that how does it feel like to have $1 million in my bank account? And then you can just keep sitting in your room and you can just keep fantasizing and just keep wasting your time. Now, these are two different ways of thinking that our brain goes through. In one, we have to go through the pain to gain the pleasure. And in the other one, our brain wants to stay in a state of pleasure, but the outcome of that is that we are going to stay in eternal pain. And as a result of staying in that eternal pain, we are going to suffer and suffer and suffer a lot, because it doesn't matter how bad your life is. It doesn't matter how much are you suffering or how much do you think that your life is messed up. There is that small voice of conscience. There is a voice of conscience that lives consistently within these two barriers or within these two walls, which keeps telling you that there is something fundamentally wrong with your life, which means is that fundamentally, biologically, and neurologically, we want to elevate our lives, which means is that this animal wants to grow. This animal wants to do something significant with his life. And if you don't understand that, that's not your problem. But if you're not aware of that, that's a big problem. And why is it a problem? We are going to discuss it in detail today, because this is the topic which fascinates the most. It fascinates me the most because I believe that if you get rid of this thing, if you take yourself from that yearning or eagerness to instantly gratify yourself to a place where you can delay gratification, where you can keep the sense of feeling pleasure at bay and you can work hard, there is a possibility that you can change your life for better. That's what I think. And that is going to be the crux of today's video, because it doesn't matter what you do, at the end of the day, it lies upon the fact that how much tolerance or how much discipline do you have to bear the pain which is supposed to be bared and still keep moving on when it doesn't feel exciting anymore? That's the whole point of today's conversation. Now, I want you to understand that today's talk is going to be a bit It's going to feel like a lecture, it is going to feel dry, but I really want you to feel it, and I really want you to understand it at a profound level. We are going to discuss it on different levels. We are going to discuss it, how does it affect our psyche? How does it affect our neurological structure, our physiological barriers? What are the enemies that are stopping you from understand how these things work? And at the end of the day, we are going to discuss two different ways. In one way, we are going to discuss that what is the traditional slow way to get rid of instant gratification. And on the other hand, we are going to discuss that what is the fast way. So there is a fast way, then there is a slow way, but we are going to discuss that how these things happen. And we are going to discuss them deeply. Now, the first thing that I want you to understand is that there is a way there is a reason, or first you understand that how these things function, and then we will dive into that how can we get rid of them. But the first thing that you need to understand is that there is a biochemical and neurological identity that every person holds in his mind. And it is shaped through his upbringing, the way he was taught, or the way he perceived that how is he going to deal with the pressure of the world became his identity. And in that identity, when you have that identity and you believe in it, and everything which is happening around you is normalized by the fact that it is happening according to the plan, what happens is that you stay in a state of homeostasis. When we talk about the homeostasis, it means that you're staying in a state of equilibrium. Whatever you believe about the world is happening around you. Everything is happening according to the plan. No matter what you do, at the end of the day, if you believe that the world is good, there are good people around you, and you're happy about the fact that it doesn't matter what happens, at least whatever I believe in is happening around me. And when you have that kind of a belief, that's when we say that your hormones, your stress hormones, or your ability to deal with the stress, since there is not a lot of stress, and because you don't have the ability to deal with that stress, it doesn't matter. But whatever is happening around you is giving you a sense of equilibrium, and it is giving you a sense of solidarity, stability, and that's why everything which is happening is cool. When that kind of thing happens, we say that you're in a state of homeostasis. But we are going to take the example of 2 to 3 things. Number 1 is the use of social media. Number 2 is the use of pornography. And number 3 is masturbation. So what happens is that when you're in a state of homeostasis and you start bombarding your mind with porn, you start bombarding your mind with social media, you start bombarding your mind by masturbating through looking at that pornography, and you start giving your mind all that kind of stimulus like alcohol or drugs or something, what happens is that your brain is not biologically wired to have that kind of stimulation. And so when you don't have that kind of stimulation in your mind, what's going to happen is that your brain is going to go into another state, and that state is known as the allostatic load. So from homeostasis, you are now in the allostasis. And in that allostasis, what's going to happen is that you're going to lose your ability to auto-regulate your emotions. Your emotions are going to get out of your way because you just don't have any idea how are you going to deal with them. And when you don't know how you're going to deal with your emotions, that's the time when you are actually, when you have disconnected your connection with your prefrontal cortex because it has been atrophied because of disuse. And when you're not being able to use your prefrontal cortex in a regular way, that means that your emotions are not working regularly. You're not having the ability to regulate your emotions through normal means because your brain is highly stimulated. And so when your brain is highly stimulated and your prefrontal cortex is not working the way you want it to work, what's going to happen is that you're going to be bombarded by this barrage of emotions, fear, anxiety, other emotions, things like unfulfilled desires, your shame. You're going to tell yourself that you have wasted 10 years of your life, and now you will never be able to recover from that. There is going to be a lack. Your mind is going to tell you that someone has this thing, someone has that thing. I'm not ever going to have this thing, so what should I do? So you're going to be bombarded by these emotions at once. Because you have stimulated your brain so much through pornography, through social media, through alcohol, or through the use of drugs, or through masturbation, what's going to happen is that your brain is going to lose the ability to regulate these emotions on its own. Because now the stimulation is too high, the demand for stimulation is too high, and the kind of emotions that you're getting, your brain is becoming a victim of anxiety. And when your brain becomes a victim of anxiety, that means that all of these emotions are coming at once, and now you have lost the ability to keep yourself stable or in the state of homeostasis. And now you need some kind of a stimulant to get out of it. So what you do, you revert to your old ways of living. You grab your phone and you start scrolling again. And for some time, you just forget about the bad things which were happening in your mind. And this is not a very good situation to be in. This is not a very good place to be in. Because it doesn't matter what you do. At the end of the day, if you don't have control over your mind, like, isn't that the whole picture? Isn't that the whole story? The only thing which matters the most in a person's life is that, does he have control over his mind? Does he have that control which is going to make sure that it doesn't matter what happens, the thing which has to be under your control is under your control? And if you don't understand this thing, what else matters? So the first thing which comes as a high stimulation, when you get your brain highly stimulated, is that you start relying upon other means, the external means, to keep yourself satisfied, to keep yourself content. And social media is the biggest example of that, because if you want drugs, you will have to go to someone who is illegally selling it. You'll have to risk your reputation and your independence and your life in order to get that, and then you have to consume that. And then there are social consequences for that, because if you keep consuming it, your brain is going to get destroyed. But for social media, I say that social media is a legal drug. You can consume this drug within the confinement of your room, and nobody's going to tell you anything. Nobody's going to say you anything, that you're using it. Why are you using it? Because this is the drug that, from a child, from a toddler to an old person, everybody's using these drugs, and nobody understands that it is actually wreaking havoc on your psychological stability. But we have become so accustomed to it that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much harm it is doing to our brain, because we have just become addicted to it so much, to a level where the excessive use of social media has been normalized by the society, because everybody's doing it. Nobody's trying to make any connections anymore. Nobody's trying to make any sort of social connections anymore. Everybody wants to do something which everybody else is doing. And that is the bad part of being a social animal. You normalize whatever other people are doing, even if it is wrong. If you're doing it, you say, okay, that's right, because other people are doing it. So there is no harm in doing that. But the question that you need to ask yourself is that, just because other people are doing it, does that give me the liberty, or does that give me the excuse or the rationale to do that thing, even if it is wrong for me? Have you ever asked yourself this question? So that's what you need to understand, is that the first thing is that from a biochemical and neurological perspective, we have a state which is called homeostasis. But when we start stimulating it with a lot of social media, or with alcohol, or with any kind of stimulant like porn or masturbation, what happens is that our brain is not designed to handle that kind of stimulation. So we go into another state, which is known as the allostasis. And in allostasis, we lose our ability to auto-regulate our emotions, which means is that our brain's ability to regulate emotions has gone through the window, out of the window. And as a result of that, our neofrontal cortex becomes atrophied because of disuse. And as a result of that, when our prefrontal cortex, which means is that our ability to think and process about the things have been damaged. So what happens is that these emotions we start getting bombarded by these emotions because we don't know how to handle them. And as a result of that, we become a victim of anxiety. And when we become a victim of anxiety, that is the time when we start freaking out, and that's when we cannot sit in solitude. And so we start relying on other stimulants so that we can keep our mind calm. But you're not keeping your mind calm. when you're using social media. You're just escaping the inevitable, and that is the psychological destruction that you're going to have, because you're just wasting your time. How you're wasting your time, we are going to discuss it. So we are talking about the biochemical and neurological changes that happen as a result of being a victim of instant gratification. But the second thing that you need to understand is that this thing goes deep. It is not just that you started using social media and your brain became a victim of that. The pattern has been with you since your childhood. And this is something that we call as the synaptic pruning. And in synaptic pruning, what you need to understand is that look at your childhood. If at the age of 23 or 24 or 29 or 30, you have become a victim, or you have become addicted to social media, and you cannot just get rid of it, just look at your childhood. Maybe you were watching a lot of television. Maybe you were watching something that you were not supposed to watch. Maybe you were watching a highly sexually stimulated material in the form of songs, in the form of adult movies or something. You were doing something which was giving you that stimulation, that you were gaining it through a screen. And when you looked at it, now you understand that, okay, I was having these things in the past, and now they have translated into something that has become a Frankenstein monster, and it doesn't matter how much do I try to get rid of it, it doesn't let me. That's the time when you understand that, okay, so that was the thing which was freaking me out in the first place. And that's what we call the synaptic pruning, which means is that your brain never ever developed the neural pathways that were needed in order to bear hard stuff and to become addicted to delayed gratification. You never did anything hard in your past. You never did anything through which you worked hard to get something. Everything was given to you. And you just wasted your life looking at the screen, and your whole world lies in that screen, and your brain does not understand any other language. That's what we call synaptic pruning. So these synaptic connections are capable of building two kinds of paths in your brain, because whenever you do there is one thing that you need to understand, is that the reason that we become so good at practicing an act is that when we do it repeatedly, our brain builds neural pathways. It is just like a road to get from point A to point B. Your brain builds a pathway, a physical pathway through the neurons, in which it solidifies the more you repeat it, and it knows how to repeat it without you even knowing it. So sometimes you become subconsciously competent at performing something, just like driving. So there are two ways through which we build connections. Number one is the path of most resistance. The path of most resistance means is that you start gaining your pleasure through sports. You start gaining your pleasure through studies. You start gaining your pleasure through moving out of your parents' house, through going with your friends and trying to enjoy life. You literally go out and you start exploring life, because going out is risky. Going out is that you will have to be vulnerable to anything which is coming your way. And when you become vulnerable to anything which is coming your way, it makes you humble. It tells you that you're not in control of everything that is happening around you, and that's okay. That is totally fine. There is nothing wrong with being vulnerable. And when you start becoming okay with that, that's the time when things start happening pretty smoothly. Because now you know that there are going to be difficulties, and you're not looking for immediate validation. Now things are happening great for you. But on the other hand, there is another way, which is the path of least resistance. And that's the path that majority of the population tread on for the rest of their life. They don't take any risks. They don't go out with their friends and explore the world. They don't make any friends. They don't indulge into any kind of sports. All they do is to do the things which are supposed to be done, which are the obligations that have been imposed on them by the world. And then they throw the bag, and then they throw everything which they're responsible for at the end of the day. And what they do is that they just keep focusing on watching a movie or watching television and doing that kind of stuff, just so that they can forget about all the obligations in their life. That's how some people operate. So there are people who do things through the path of least resistance, and then there are people who do things with the path of most resistance. And so what happens is that when you always take the path of least resistance, your brain loses the ability to process information quickly. And the worst consequence of that is that you lose the ability to process information quickly and to use that information in the situation that you find yourself in, and you never ever develop the execution muscles that you need in order to become valuable to the world and to become a valuable human being, even in your own eyes. Sometimes you can have all the knowledge in the world, but you will not have the execution muscle. You will not know how to use this knowledge in order to become efficient. But on the other hand, you will see some people who will be sitting beside you, and they will be having the exact same information, and they will be using it to change their lives and to solve the problems that have been assigned to them. And your brain will be freaking out that, what the hell is wrong with me? Why don't I understand these things that this person is understanding so rapidly? What's wrong with me? And the answer is, there's nothing wrong with you. The only thing which is wrong with you is that you just don't know how things work. And when you don't know how things work, that's the time when you start freaking out. That's the time when you start blaming yourself. But the only thing is that your brain was never ever developed in a way in which it could have given you the satisfaction and the contentment that you can get from delayed gratification, because you never ever performed any kind of activities that could have given you that peace of mind that you were looking for. And so the third thing is that from a sociological perspective, we call a condition that is known as the anomie, A-N-O-M-I-E, in which you start comparing yourself, and this comparison has been skyrocketed by the constant bombardment of lifestyle content from social media. 4.6 billion people use social media every single day. This is something which is, I would say that this is insane. That many people are using social media, and the thing which I don't understand is that there is always going to be someone who is better than you in this world. If you're 30 and you haven't done anything with your life, what's going to happen is that you're going to see an 18 years influencer on the internet, and who is living in Bali, who is living in Maldives, who is living in Americas, who is living in any part of the world, and he has made something out of his life. As a 30-year-old, you're going to look at that 18-year-old and you're going to tell yourself that your life is a mess. People are flying in private jets at an age of 18, and you are not being able to do that, and it's going to wreak havoc on your mind because you're comparing yourself with something which is not under your control. So the healthy way is always that you compare yourself to your yesterday's version. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And when that doesn't happen, your brain starts freaking out. And as a result of that, what happens is that you start having this void in your mind, because you know that it's going to take a lot of work to gain the things that you want in your life. You also want to become a centimillionaire, but you're living in your mother's basement and you don't have any ways to even fulfill your basic needs, and you know that it's going to take a lot of time. It gives you a lot of stress, and since you don't have the ability to auto-regulate your emotions, you revert to the old ways of thinking. You go back to social media, you start scrolling again, you start looking at pornography so that you can just escape that level of stress which is actually killing you right now. Any kind of escape which is giving you a ticket to get out of that loop of misery without any effort is not worth having. Because you're not avoiding that pain, you're not getting rid of that pain, you're just escaping it. And for a while, it is going to come back with a sense of vengeance, revenge, and hatred with an intensity that you cannot anticipate right now. Do you really think that just by looking at social media, just by procrastinating on the things which are supposed to be done, you're getting rid of them? No, you're not getting rid of them. You're just avoiding them. These things are being avoided, and a day is going to come when these things are going to become such Frankenstein monsters that they're going to get all of your peace away from you, because you will not have the ability to deal with the pressure that comes in your life. You want to become good at dealing with the pressure in your life, you just don't have the tools to do it. And there is nothing that you can do about it. When you just don't have the tools, it's just like fighting with the bear with a stick. What if you don't even have the stick? What's then? You don't know how to deal with these things. What's then? How are you going to do that? That is a question that you need to ask yourself. And so when you keep comparing yourself and you keep wasting your time and you keep finding your escape in social media, in logotherapy, we say that Viktor Frankl, great guy, I read his book, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he discussed and described that how his life changed when he went, as a Jew, he went to the concentration camp and he saw the human nature at its worst, both from an aggressor's end and from the receiver's end. And he describes an incident in which he was sleeping, and he said that some guy was mumbling in sleep, and he was definitely scared of a dream that he was having. And he said that he tried to wake him up, but then he remembered that anything which is any worse thing, any bad thing which is happening in his dream is going to be way, way better than what he is experiencing in the real world. It was quite painful, and even when, for the first time I read it, I was very young. But when I read it, it literally gave me chills. How bad can it go? We have no idea. How bad human nature can be, we have no idea. We just don't know. And when we don't know, it's better that we do something about it. Which means is that we need to make our lives better. So what happens is that when you just keep comparing yourself, there's always a gap between you and your life, which is potentially a happy life. And you try to fill that gap through highly stimulating activities like social media or visualizing or taking a register like that and sitting and reading that, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to achieve that, I'm going to do this kind of activity. You just keep excited. And that's what we call the hyperbolic discounting. What you do is that you're putting the difficult task in the far future and you're telling yourself that I'm going to do that. And when you say that you're going to do that, as a result of that, what happens is you say, okay, I'm going to do this thing tomorrow. I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. tomorrow. And at 10 a.m., you're really excited that you're going to do that. But the moment night comes, but the moment you start reaching that 4 a.m. mark, your brain starts freaking out. It tells you that we are not programmed to do this thing. This thing doesn't feel normal. We're not going to do that. So there is a constant fight between your conscience and your brain. And you say that, what the fuck is happening in my mind? Just one day ago, I was saying that I'm going to wake up at 4, and I was pretty excited about that. Okay, that was your conscience, which was telling you what's the right thing to do. But the thing which is stopping you at 2 a.m., that is your brain. That is the synaptic pruning. That is the neural pathways. That is your brain conditioning. That is telling you that you cannot do that. So being excited about doing something and then finding out that you're not very much resourceful, you don't have a lot of resources at your disposal to do that thing. These are two very different things. And that is something that you need to understand. These are two very different things. They're not the same, and they don't function the same. And that's why you keep wasting your life. That's why years pass, decades pass, and you never change, just because you keep putting the change on tomorrow. And it's not because you're lazy. It's just because your brain is not wired to deal with the kind of stress that comes as a result of changing your life for better. And so what happens is that if you try to eliminate it, if you try to eliminate the stimulating activities, you start having existential crisis. because you have built all your life around using social media and telling yourself that, okay, whatever I want, I can get it without any pain. And then you start having existential crisis. You start having this, what developmental psychology calls it, is that you start having an ego identity crisis, because ego is not just vanity. Ego is not just, I am better than everybody. Ego is your identity. Ego is literally the tangible identity of your soul. It is the tangible identity of your physical being. It tells you you are alive. It tells you that this is you. It tells you this religion you have, this culture you belong to, these are your values, these are your principles, everything which goes unconscious within you, and it gives you a knee-jerk reaction whenever that value or principle gets violated, and you start feeling it as an invasion to your personal boundaries. That's what your ego is all about. That's what your ego is. That's what your identity is. That's what you live for. That's what you will die for. And so just imagine you started using social media at 12 years old. Now you're 30. Now you're 30. From 12 to 30, you got all your pleasure, you got all your satisfaction, not from doing something creative, not from making friends, not from applying to jobs, but from scrolling on social media, binge watching movies, scrolling on social media endlessly, procrastinating, watching pornography, masturbating. And at 30, you have realized that you have wasted 18 years of your life. And now you want to do the adult stuff productively. And then you understand that your brain's growth is of a 12-year-old, and at 30, you are just an adult infant, as Jordan Peterson calls it. You are just a fucking adult infant. So at the age of 30, you have the identity of a 12-year-old. Not a very good place to be in. So now we have tried to understand it from a biochemical, from a sociological, and from a psychological perspective of how the instant gratification destroys your brain. Now we are going to understand that how these things happen, and what are the physiological barriers, and what is the neurological structure that gives us the tangible proof that being addicted to instant gratification changes our mind at a physical level. When you understand these things, you will know that what is happening in your brain and what will happen as a result of you changing your life. How you're going to change your life, we are going to discuss it later. But I want you to understand it to the core, because when you understand it physically, that's when you can get rid of them. You cannot deal with any intangible stuff because you don't know these things happen. If somebody tells you that it is all mental, it is all psychological, no, it's not. The new researchers in the neurological world have told us, they have literally opened our eyes to new possibilities that, okay, every action that we take gives us a physical change in our brain, and our brain is our operating center. That's where we operate. So we need to understand that how our brain changes as a result of that. So in that physiological barrier, what happens is that, look, even in the meditation sciences, basically they're not sciences, but even if we talk about meditation, even if we talk about the yogic sciences, the human brain lives in two conditions. Either it is thinking, or it is sleeping. These are the only two things that our brain can do. Either it is thinking or it is sleeping. So when we say that we are thinking, that means that we are in the default mode network, which means is that we are resting and we are daydreaming. We will not call it thinking, but we can call it daydreaming. Okay, thinking is a conscious process where you try to channel your thoughts consciously into gaining a predefined outcome. But on the other hand, when you're daydreaming, you're in a default mode network, which is normal. And on the other hand, we have the other condition in which we are doing something. So we are in a task positive network. And so what happens is that For a brain which has not been trained to stay idle and it wants constant scrolling and constant stimulation, the default mode network becomes damaged. And by becoming damaged is that it is not daydreaming or resting. It is either indulging into bad daydreaming, in which you are anticipating bad scenarios in which your life is going to get absolutely train wrecked, number one, or number two, you're just criticizing yourself for wasting all of your time. Only these two things are happening within your brain. And so what happens is that you literally don't have the ability to sit by yourself and to live your life. This is a thing that you're missing in your life, and you understand it deeply. The second reason is the molecular switch. And this is something which is very fascinating. And when I read about it, it was when I was researching about this topic, I literally went nuts that how these things happen within our brain, and then they change the structure of our brain. There is a protein which is known as the delta FOSP, and it starts building upon our nucleus accumbens. Now, the nucleus accumbens is actually a bridge between our limbic system, which means is that all our body movements and the way we operate, and the basal ganglia, which is the part of our brain which is responsible for two things. Number one, our motor functioning, constant motor functioning, which means is that if I'm using this thing or if I'm writing, that is conscious motor function, and our habit formation. So this is a direct bridge between our habit formation and how our limbic activity is going to perform that function. How are we going to drive? How are we going to do these things? So this delta FOSB protein gets built up upon the nucleus accumbens, and when that happens, the first thing that you need to understand is that it is very stable. It is a very stable protein, which means is that it can stay for months or years. And that's why it is always difficult to get rid of these highly stimulating alternatives that we have in order to calm ourselves down. It is very stable. So its only role is to that it increases your sensitivity towards the triggers, like if you're consuming alcohol or if you're having cigarettes or if you're drinking a lot of coffee. What happens is that it will reduce the level of sensitivity towards the normal rewards, where you can just sit by yourself, have a cup of tea, start reading something, start reading Shakespeare, start reading Nietzsche, start reading the Quran, start reading the Bible, indulging into prayer, meditating, working out. It is going to decrease the sensitivity towards those things which are going to give you the delayed gratification. And it is going to increase your sensitivity towards getting that dopamine hit, in which you get that rush of excitement before you do the action, or you try to instantly gratify yourself. And so when you abruptly start getting rid of any addiction that you have, you get into a reward deficit state. And until that delta FOSB emotion protein that have been built around your nucleus accumbens does not wear off, it doesn't disappear, you are going to have that habit. How much time does it take to get rid of that habit? Nobody knows. Some people say that it's going to take 21 days. Some people say that it's going to take 66 days. Who knows? But it literally changes your brain. It changes the structure of your brain in ways where you become a victim of one thing: learned helplessness. You become a victim of learned helplessness. And it happens because you have this protein around your brain, and as a result of that, you think that the moment you do something, you must get a reaction out of that. Because you know that the moment you open TikTok, you become pleasant. You get this sense of pleasure. So whenever you go and you do some push-ups, you do the first push-up, you don't feel anything. You say that this is not right. You work for one day, you work hard for one day, and then you feel nothing, and you think that you have to go through all that pain tomorrow. That's not how it works. Whenever I'm stressed, I just scroll on social media and I start having all these positive feelings. And from then on, I don't have to work hard. This is a different kind of world where I always have to earn my pleasure. This doesn't feel right. I don't want to do that. And you're right. In the beginning of this video, we discussed that there are two ways in this life. Number one is the path of most resistance, and then there is another path, which is the path of least resistance. And both of them have visitors. Both of them have their own clubs. Both of them have their own communities. There are people who don't want to push themselves, and then there are people who want to push themselves. And both are not happy. The one who is pushing himself every single day doesn't like it, yet he does it because he's addicted to the end result. And the person who is not pushing himself hard wants some challenge in his life, because the pleasure which comes without any effort is not giving him the kind of contentment and satisfaction which is important for a human being to stay sane. And that's why you see the people who pursue pleasure all the time freak out and become maniacs at the end. And so when you become a maniac at the end, that's why people say that bad habits are easy to form and hard to live with. So what happens is that your sense of pleasure comes from a click. Your sense of pleasure comes from a sense of happy ending, because you have been watching movies and you think that you have to go through pain once and then you can have happy ending. But life doesn't work that way. There are no happy endings in the world. There is one happy ending, and that happy ending is the start of another painful beginning. There's always another mountain to climb if you want to move ahead. If you just want to stay where you are, no worries, you can stay wherever you are. And there is nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to blame you for not trying to change your life. If you don't want to change your life and you are absolutely happy with wherever you are, go do something. I'm just talking to those people who are absolutely stressed out about the fact that they want to change their life, yet they don't have the mental tools that they need to do it. And they're right. And so the fourth and the most important thing that I wanted to share, and I think that it is a very important thing for you to understand, and this is an extreme example. Not all of you will be the victims of that, but at least 70% of you are going to be victims of that. And it is pornography-induced hyperfrontality. Pornography-induced hyperfrontality. Try to understand this thing. This is a very dangerous concept. When you keep stimulating and when you keep making your brain high through visual pornography, through visual sexual scenes, what happens is that you become a victim of something which is known as the frontal hyperfrontality. And this frontal hyperfrontality is literally like you have an injury in your brain. It is equivalent of that. It wreaks that kind of damage within your brain. And as a result of that, the gray matter in your brain, which is responsible for three things. Now listen to this. Number one is decision making. Your ability to make a decision and then to stick with it. Your ability to regulate your emotions, where you don't start freaking out when you have anything bad happening in your life. And number three is that your high order cognition. Cognition is everything which makes you human. Your ability to analyze, your ability to criticize, your ability to process emotions, your ability to communicate your ideas, your ability to do the daily tasks, everything comes from cognition. Everything starts getting damaged because your gray matter starts shrinking. And that means that your willpower gets a toll. It takes a toll on your willpower. And as a result of that, you lose your control over your impulses. What does that mean? You lose control over your impulses. Just imagine. Don't you think that your life is happening in the same way? Don't you think that everything that you do, you just don't have any control over it? So we are going to wrap this thing up quickly. So these are the things which happen to your brain when you keep yourself instantly when you become a victim of instant gratification. Now, first thing that you need to understand before we dive into the solution, you need to understand that there are two things. Number one, whenever you want to get rid of something, the first thing that you need to understand is that you should know who are your enemies. You need to have an idea that who are your enemies. If you don't have that idea, you're not going to go very far in life. So in this regard, where you want to move from instant gratification to a person who wants to delay pleasure, who has the ability to delay pleasure as much as he can or as much as he wants, you need to understand that there are three distinct enemies that you have. Number one is the shame of the past. Whenever you will start making your life better, your mind is going to tell you that this is not how we operate. We have never done these things in life. We are always being a loser, and that's the way we are going to be, because your brain does not like surprises. It does not like change. And the thing that it doesn't like, it will not help you to grow in that particular domain. Number two is the physical resistance of your brain. Your brain is literally going to create limbic friction. You will feel friction in your neck. You will feel friction in your spine. You're going to shrink, and you're going to see that what the fuck is happening with me. Another person is going to take, and it is going to be totally different from that person who was making all these plans to make his. So there is a fast way and there is a slow way. And in that fast way, you need to understand that I go the fast way. If I have to change myself, I prefer the fast way, because when you're in your survival, you have to do everything to get out of the miserable situation that you find yourself in. But we are going to discuss the fast way later, because I think that you should go the gradual, the incremental, the progressive way. So the first thing that you have to have in your brain or in your mind is that you must regain your sensory grounding, because right now you're numb. You're not feeling anything. So you need to get your senses back. And for that, you do the Timro or the Yoga Nidra method. And it is very simple. Before you sleep, you just lie down, and you will see that whenever, even if you're not aware of that, from now on, you're going to be aware of that. Whenever you are having a bad thought, it is going to create some feeling in some distinctive part of your body. Let's say that you're freaking out. You will see that your jaws are shrinking, or you're having an itch in your neck, or your neck is having this stressful situation, or your spine is having, you're going to see that there's going to be a stress in a particular part of your body whenever your brain is creating some stress hormones. So what you're going to do is that you're going to focus on every part of your body, every internal organ of your body. The first thing that you're going to do is that you're going to focus on your brain, you're going to focus on your heart, and you will see the moment you focus on them, they release all the tension. All the tension goes out of your system the moment you start focusing on different parts of your body. It is not going to be easy in the beginning, and it's not going to be seen as a lot of progress. But trust me, this is something which is going to change you in the next 6 months. You just do it before you fall asleep. A day is going to come when you're going to wake up as a person who's totally changed. This has worked miracles in my life. And I just don't do it before I have to sleep, or I just don't have a dedicated time when I do it. I'm doing it right now. I'm focusing on the part of brain because it is our first live session, and I haven't spoken on the camera for that long ever. So right now I'm a bit exhausted. So I'm focusing that where that exhaustion is coming from. It is coming from the back of my head, from the root of my upper spine, and it is going all the way down to the middle of my back. And I'm feeling it, and that's why I'm sustaining it. So the first thing is that you have to gain control over your senses yet again. Number two is microvolition therapy. And this is something which James Clear in Atomic Habits also talks about. Is that whenever you have to use social media, you do something which is of delayed gratification. Let's say that you have a craving to use social media. Do 20 push-ups before that, or do something for 1 minute. If you want to indulge something in your habit, let's say that you want to do pull-ups. Don't do 1,000 pull-ups on the first day. Just go and do one, or just even hang if you cannot do even one. Make this your identity, that you're a person who does pulling exercises. So if you want something to enter your life, you will have to create small pathways for it to enter. And as a result of that, it will make its own place, and a day will come that it will occupy your mind. If it is a positive thing and you have done it consciously, welcome to the world where you are going to be unconsciously competent and brilliant and excellent. Number 2, social mirroring. And this is something that you need to understand. If you really want to change your life, and if you really want to get out of this dopamine imbalance that you have in your brain, you will have to get out in the world, and you'll have to do something voluntarily with other people. Don't join a club, don't join a community. Just do something which you think is going to be right for you. Just go and feed the poor people. Even if you don't have the money, if somebody's feeding, just go and volunteer as a waiter, volunteer as a person who's distributing that food. Because sharing and contribution gives you confidence, and that confidence is needed in order to have a fulfilled life. That's what I have seen in my life. Become a force for good. And your brain is going to tell you that it's not going to make any difference. This thing has nothing to do with the kind of changes that I'm looking for in my life. Trust me. Trust me. Just go and do something voluntarily, socially. The kind of confidence that you're going to get as a result of that. See other people. If you don't have the ability to solve problems, look at other people. How do they solve problems? You look at them once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times. By the time you watch them 15th time, you will have the ability to come up with solutions, because our brains have mirror neurons. We are just like monkeys. We learn by looking. We look at other things, and then we learn by looking at them. Isn't that amazing? That just by looking at something, you can learn. Isn't that amazing? And the most important, and the 4th one, is that you have to set your circadian rhythms right. So what do I mean by that? It means that last 3 hours of your day, you're going to get rid of all the devices, and you're going to do something which is going to exhaust you intellectually or physically. So for me, for the last 3 hours of my day, I don't do any kind of social media. So what do I do is that I either read, or even if I have my laptop, I just research. Like, I was not being able to sleep at 11, so I didn't grab my phone. I sat on computer, and I literally went in from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. I just worked on my business. I just worked on whatever I was working on. And that was the perfect time to do that thing, because there was no one to disturb me, and there was no noise outside, and I just did it right. So this is the slow way. Now we are going to talk about the fast way. And for that, I will have to grab something. So will you excuse me for a second? This is the last thing for today. And I want you to understand it. And I want you to understand it. This diary has changed my life. I don't know how to describe it, but there we go. So I don't have any idea that how I'm going to describe it, but this diary has changed my life. I have never ever had anything else in my life which had such kind of impact over me as this one has. And I was at the lowest of my life, and this is the fast way, and I want to understand it closely. If you want to go fast, if you really want to change yourself in the next 21 days, just take it as a gift. I created this war protocol of 4 hours. I was at the lowest in my life at a point, and I just didn't know what to do. The change that I thought that would change my life would have taken so long that I couldn't wait that much to gain my psychological stability back. And then I decided that I'm not going to think what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm not going to think what I'm going to do day after tomorrow or the next month. I'm just going to ask myself this question: what is the most stressful thing which is going to create the most amount of results that I can do in the next 4 hours? Let's say that I am absolutely depressed about the situation that I find myself in. Let's say that I don't have money. Okay, the question that I'm going to ask myself is that what is the thing that I don't want to do, that I can do, that can give me money, or that can actually increase the probability that I can have money in the next 4 hours? Okay, I don't want to make phone calls. I don't want to make sales phone calls. That's the thing that I'm going to do. And I have taken it from Carl Jung, which says that what you want the most is always going to be found where you least want to look. How impressive is that? That what you want the most is always going to be found where you least want to look. So you ask yourself this question, that what is it that I don't want to do, but is going to create the massive impact that I want? And then you just do that and see your life changing in ways that you cannot even imagine. So take this 4-hour protocol or go gradually. First, gain control over your senses, then start making your habits, your identity, then start gaining control over your circadian rhythm, or just go all in and have these 4-hour protocols. Just ask yourself, what is the hardest thing that I can do in the next 4 hours? You can start with 1 hour, but ask yourself, this is the fastest way to gain control over your impulses. This is the fastest way to repair the damage that you have done to your brain as a result of instant gratification. And I just want this live to end with this story. You know, my hero of history is Xenophon. I just love him. And because when I look at him, I literally see myself as him, because he was a philosopher, or at least he loved philosophy. He lived in the time of Socrates, and he was a friend of Socrates, and he used to discuss philosophy with him. But he was a wealthy man, and his obsession was with human nature, that how humans function. But on the other hand, he never had the ability to see the human nature at its best. But one day he got a chance where Cyrus invited him to join him on an expedition where he was going against Persia in order to defeat some of its cities. So it was not a holistic invasion. He just wanted to fight because he thought some of the cities of Persia were causing him pain. Now his brother was the king of Persia. So he hired the Greek mercenaries and he fought with them. And what happens is that the Greeks actually defeated the Persians. But just because of the warrior fury, Cyrus went all in to kill his brother, who was surrounded by his guards, and he just went with a few hundred men and got killed in the battle. Now the Greeks, who were hired guns, who had no idea how were they going to get out of the situation, they were totally lost. And at that time, Xenophon had this which he saw that the Zeus's light set his home on fire, and he just woke up in sweat, and he understood that death was staring them in the face, and his enemy or his soldiers were blaming each other for the damage that have been inflicted, but they're not looking at the real danger, is that the Persians are going to grab them by the throat and they'll kill them one by one, and they're not going to leave them just the way it looks. So he told them that instead of focusing on yourself, focus on the enemy. And as a result of that, under his leadership, all of the Greeks came back home. Now, what is the lesson for you in this story? There's only one lesson. Never ever negotiate with weakness. All the internal weaknesses within you, you have to kill them. And if you kill them, that's the only way to become a better version of yourself. Till the next time. Peace.